So today I want to talk about the journey from idea to financial and commercial viability of a business. Now, I want to argue that the biggest point of success in the business doesn't come from the idea phase. Now, there's so much emphasis on ideas can change the world. Everything starts with thought, and the idea is what ultimately got the entrepreneur or the pioneer to that point of recognition and success and sustainability. But that is only phase one. There's arguably 5 or 6 or 7 different phases that you'd have to go through before the business gets to a point where it is successful. And success means different things to different people. But let's say, for the sake of argument, in this example, success is getting to a point where the income in your organization can cover all of its expenses and have a healthy amount of change left over for you to make impact. Now, from the point of idea to the point where the business is financially viable, there's so many things that has to take place. So the idea is just a little something that pops in your mind and said, you know what, I have a problem, I struggled with something, I waited too long in the line to pay for my groceries. What if I come up with an idea where someone else can stand in that line for me? Okay, cool, problem solved. Now, once you start that idea, and I'm just thinking of a random thing that just popped in my head at the moment. Once that idea is there, now the research actually has to take place. So the first thing you need to do is you need to understand, is this even a viable idea? Is it too gimmicky? Is it a stupid idea? Is it something that could work, but there's a lot of legwork that has to take place to get it to a point where it can be accepted? Or can we skip past that phase and say, okay, you know what, there's enough people that are as frustrated about standing in a line as I am because time is money. And if I can reduce the amount of time that I need to stand in a line, then maybe there's something there because now there's a demand for it. There's more and more people that want it. Now you need to see, okay, is there anybody else that is doing this? Because if you decide, okay, based on the research, that would make this a viable business for me, I would have to charge a certain price. So if you're looking at what is already in the market, and a lot of the time we don't know that their competitors until we actually do some research, because we think that because we didn't see someone else doing the service that we are thinking of offering, it just doesn't exist. And most of the time that is not true. But when you start doing some research, and you actually find, hey, but there's about 15 other guys that are offering services like this. There's 15 other guys that are offering this level of convenience, and they went into the market far lower than I can. Maybe they have something that I don't have. Maybe they have a bunch of interns that has a stipend where they don't have to pay those interns on a monthly basis, so their cost is substantially reduced as a result. So maybe they have that edge. Maybe they have vehicles on the road which they might have used from a different company, and those vehicles aren't used most of the time, so they have that resource at their disposal. There are other companies that might have certain advantages that are playing in the space that you might not have. Now you're going in here, in order for you to make this a viable business, you have to charge much higher than your competitors are. And when you are in a market that is price sensitive, they are 9 times out of 10 going to choose the guy that are a lot cheaper and a guy that has been in the business a lot longer, that has more reputability, that has more trust. So that idea might then fall flat. But let's say, okay, you have something. Maybe you have the advantage. Maybe you have some interns. Maybe you have a unique way of marketing this service, this product, that will allow you to get a bit of an edge, okay? So now you have to bring on staff. Because if you have 2 or 3 people that need that service, you can only be in one place at one time. You are not omnipresent, right? So you need to employ some staff. Now it's a matter of finding the right staff. And can they carry your brand well? And can you allocate enough time to train them, not only from a functional perspective, but from an attitude perspective, seeing that they're working with customers and all of those things over there. Then you'll have to do some research from a marketing perspective. Who's your ideal client? Is it the elderly that needs to collect their medicine on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis? Is it people that needs their licenses renewed, so they need to go to the traffic department and they don't have time to sit there for 2 or 3 hours? And what happens if those things are offline? Do they then come back? Is that an extra charge? Is the customer going to dispute that charge? So all of these things needs to be taken into account. Okay. Then we need to look at compliance. Now, will some municipalities, will some organizations allow other people to collect information or product on their behalf? Then there are HR requirements. So if somebody has to drive where they are in the course and scope of your employment, and if they, heaven forbid, knock another vehicle, who's then liable for that? Because these are all things that are out of your control. And yesterday we spoke about pest tech, which are external factors that affect your organization. So all of these things need to work harmoniously together in order for your business to be successful. So do you understand how challenging it could be to get your business from the idea phase to a point where it is sustainable? Now, too many of us, we're looking at other people, and we're seeing the businesses that they're running, and we're seeing how successful those businesses are. And then we're looking at the person that started and pioneered and grew that business, and we're telling ourselves, but this is an idiot. You know, I'm more educated than this person. I'm harder working than this person. I'm more faithful than this person. Why is this person getting success so easily? Maybe I should go into this industry, because if someone with half my IQ can make a success of this, then surely I can as well. But we don't see what that person goes through when their journey started, when their journey was midway through, when their journey was at the lonely phase I think Alex Hormozi said it quite well, and you'll notice I quote him quite a bit because, in my opinion, he's one of the market leaders when it comes to marketing and positioning of brands in the industry at the moment. So he said something that really struck out. And he said, everybody's rooting for you at the beginning and everybody's rooting for you at the end. But in the middle is silence. Nobody really sees you. Nobody's really rooting for you. And that is where you need to be able to do things knowing that this might or might not work, right? With no support, with no resources, with no one cheering you on and saying, we got your back, keep pushing, keep going. I'm here, I'm buying from you, I'm supporting you, I'm sharing your content, I'm sharing your product, I'm being a good testimonial. In fact, when you start a business and you're looking for your friends to support you, most of the time, you don't actually find them. I mean, when I started my business journey, I had a lot of friends, right? And there's probably about one or two guys that still actively support, that still come to events, that still share my posts and my podcasts and my content. And then there are guys that you just don't see them. It's not that they're bad people. It's not that they're not supporting you. It's just that, if every friend had to support every friend's idea and every friend's business, it might get to a point where they're taking time away from themselves and, or maybe they just genuinely don't believe in the product that you have because we are different individuals. So nothing against the friends. But the point I'm making is when you are in business, right, and you think that so many people are going to support you through that difficult time, you need to brace yourself for the reality in that might not happen the way you anticipate it will happen. Some more obstacles that you'll potentially come across is sales, because now you're looking at onboarding some new clients, you're looking at onboarding some new clients, and you're looking at increasing your market share. So you have to ask yourself, okay, do I try to tap into an untapped market where you're introducing something new to people's budget, or would you look at cutting into your competitors' market share? And if you're doing that, you need to have a strong, unique selling proposition. If you don't have that, then you're just another business that is trying to offer the same thing that everybody else is offering. And someone told me before we started coffee shops here in Cape Town, there are more coffee shops in Cape Town per capita than there are in New York. So if you don't have a strong enough value proposition, something that really differentiates you from the other coffee shops that are out there, you're just going to be one of those coffee shops that started and stopped. So you don't want to be that. You want to make sure that you have something unique to offer, something that people will travel 5, 10, 15 kilometers for, because you offer something that they can't get within the 1 or 5 kilometer radius where they currently reside or where they are working. Okay, so these are just small examples of things that could stop the business from getting to a point of viability. Now, that doesn't take anything away from the idea, right? I mean, Person X can come up with an idea and Elon Musk can come with that same idea. And even though Person X started the idea before Elon Musk did, Elon Musk had resources. He had deeper pockets. And again, I'm just using a radical example. And it's the same idea, but one person can take that idea and make it $1 billion industry or $1 billion company, whereas the other idea just died as an idea because it didn't have the resources. The person didn't have the necessary skill to convert it from a viable idea to a commercially viable business. So, what are the things that you need to do to get it from good idea to commercial viability? And I'm going to talk about 10 topics. And this 10 topics is going to form part of a series that we're going to start where we unpack each of these 10 things. And we're really going to go into so much detail because it won't be able to be one podcast. It's going to take me an entire 2 days to really unpack everything. So I'm going to do this over a certain period. In fact, this is what this podcast is built on. It's here to help people build sustainable, strategic businesses so they can go on to be successful, employ more people, reduce the social ills that we are seeing in our communities. Because a lot of the ills stems from the fact that there's no money. It stems from the fact that people can't buy the basic necessities and feed their family. So, the first thing we're going to look at is entrepreneurship in general. So what are the fundamentals of entrepreneurship? We're going to look at things like your vision statement, your mission statement. Are you aligned? Then we're going to look at the entrepreneur, in other words, the jockey and not the horse. We're going to look at you, your mental health. Are you the best version of yourself? Then we're going to look at your leadership strategy and your management strategy. Then we're going to look at your marketing strategy. And here we're going to look at traditional marketing, but we're also going to talk about market research. So an important thing that gets overlooked in today's market is market research. Everybody thinks because I saw this person building this business, it should be easy enough for me to build this business. But when you actually start doing some research, you might find that it's not as easy as you thought it would be. So it is important for you to do some research. The next thing we're going to look at is the digital marketing, because we are in 2025. And if you still think that building a brand without digital presence is going to get you results, then you're sorely mistaken, right? After that, we're going to look at sales and negotiating. Then we're going to look at human resources. Then we're going to look at legal and compliance. Then we're going to look at your administration function. Then we're going to look at your financial management. And then we're going to look at your operations. Okay, so there's a lot of things we're going to look at. We're going to unpack that in the days and weeks to come. We started this podcast doing one podcast per week, but based on the amount of content that is out there, based on the amount of value that we can add through this process, we realize that we need to do it a lot more frequently. Now, I don't want to be ambitious enough and say, look, we're going to do this thing every single day. Right? When I was in radio, we used to do it once a week. And I think once a week is also enough for you to digest, implement this in your business, and then come back and see, okay, cool, let's measure the impact. Let's measure the results. And you have to put proper KPIs in place, key performance indicators, and ask yourself, I've set this target for the week. Have I received the goal? Have I reached that goal? Have I reached that milestone? And if not, you go back and you ask yourself why. So there's a very simple process we work on. It's called BADRC. And this is what I learned when I was in corporate. So the B stands for, what was the budget? In other words, what was the goal that we've set for the week? So let's say the budget was 100,000 Rand. Right? And then at the end of that week, we look at the actual, and that is what the A stands for. What was the actual amount that we received? So let's say it was 80,000. So the D then is, what is the difference between the budgeted and the actual? So that might be a 20,000 deficit in this case over here. And then the R is, what is that reason for that variance? So you'd have to do a root cause analysis to understand, why did we not get 100,000? And a root cause analysis is when you ask the question 5 times. So if you ask the question, why did we not receive 100,000 Rand or $100,000, whatever your goal might be, wherever you're listening to it. So someone might say, okay, sales were a bit slow this week. So the next why would be, okay, why were sales slow this week? Let's say because, we recognize that it's the middle of the month, so people only get paid at the end of the month. And then you go down that rabbit hole, and usually when you get to the 5th why, you get the root cause. And then that is where the C comes in. What is the corrective action that we now need to implement? Do we need to have a bit of a promo in the middle of the month because we know that money might be tight then? And then when the demand shoots up again toward the end of the month, when people have money, that is when we can put our prices up. So those are all questions that you would ask yourself. And over the next days and weeks and months to come, we're really going to unpack and explore. And I want to bring some guests onto the podcast as well and pick a different brain, because sometimes you can have the same topic unpacked by 2 different minds, and it gives you such a comprehensive perspective that it gets people to say, wow, I never thought of the same thing that way. So again, if you'd like to be part of our community, it's absolutely free of charge. For now, that is. Get some more information, go to our website. I'll send all the links and all the details in the comment section below. Until next time, goodbye and God bless.